My name is Michael. I'm 78 years old. And if I could go back to one single evening, not to earn more money, not to fix a mistake at work, but just to sit next to my wife and turn off the television, I would give anything for it. Because my wife's last words were not loud. They weren't angry, they were quiet. And that's why they broke me. We were married for 41 years. And only at the end did I realize you can spend decades in a marriage and still leave the person beside you feeling alone. If you're married right now, please listen carefully, because I thought we were fine, and fine can be the beginning of losing everything slowly. And I'm about to tell you a story that still makes me sit in silence sometimes, even when the room is full of people. I'm not sharing this to get sympathy, and I'm not sharing it to sound wise. I'm sharing it because if you're married right now, or you used to be, or you hope to build a real lasting connection with someone, you might hear what I understood too late. My wife's name was Evelyn. We were together for 41 years. 41 years sounds like a lifetime. And in many ways, it is. But here's the truth. You can spend 41 years next to someone and still not truly know what they feel, because next to is not the same as close. For most of my life, I believed I was a good husband. I worked, paid the bills, fixed what broke, showed up when something went wrong. I never cheated. I never walked away. If you asked me at 50 whether my marriage was happy, I would have answered without hesitation. Of course, we're a solid couple. We're fine. But fine can be one of the most dangerous words in a marriage, because fine often means we're used to each other. We don't fight. We don't talk about what hurts. We just live side by side. And that's exactly how we lived. I was raised with the kind of advice many men of my generation heard. Don't be weak. Don't talk too much. Love is shown through actions, not words. I believed that with my whole chest. To me, love meant a repaired roof, a paid mortgage, a steady life. I thought being responsible was the same thing as being close. But I didn't understand something simple. Evelyn didn't need me to be there only when things were hard. She needed me in the ordinary days, the quiet days, the days when nothing was on fire, the days with no big problem to solve. She didn't want a rescuer. She wanted a husband. I remember a night about 20 years ago. We were sitting in the kitchen. She was chopping vegetables, calm, careful, the way she always did. I was reading the newspaper the way I did every night, and out of nowhere she said, "Michael, do you ever talk to me anymore?" I didn't even look up. I said something like, "Of course I do, I'm right here." And she said, "You're here in your body, but where are you?" And I smirked. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because to me it sounded like one of those emotional conversations. Like she was just bored, like she was being picky. I truly believed everything was under control. I believed that as long as we weren't fighting, we were doing well. But here's what I know now. Sometimes silence in a marriage isn't peace. It's surrender. Evelyn kept making small attempts. She asked me to take evening walks with her. She asked me to turn off the TV and just sit. She suggested little weekend trips, not for errands, just to be together. And I kept answering, "Next week. I'm tired. Later. When things calm down." I said the word later like I had an unlimited supply of it. But later isn't a promise. It's a trap. Because one day you wake up and you realize later ran out. I'm not here to use heavy words. I'll say it like this. There came a season when things became very difficult for Evelyn. Quietly difficult. Seriously difficult. The house started to feel different. Same furniture, same cups in the cabinet. But the air changed. And when you see the person you built your adult life with begin to tire faster, speak less, smile less, you start to understand time is not stretchy. That's when I started trying. That's when I brought the tea, sat longer, spoke softer. But there was one problem. I was trying to catch up to closeness at the exact moment you can't catch up. I was trying to make up for 41 years in a handful of weeks, and you can't do that. One evening I sat beside her. The light in the room was dim. The TV was off. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to distract myself. I was just there. Evelyn was looking out the window, and then she said a sentence I will never forget. She didn't say it loudly. She didn't accuse. She didn't yell. She said it calmly, almost like a whisper. "Michael, you were always a good man, but I was lonely next to you, more often than you ever knew." That hit harder than any argument, because I couldn't fight it. I wanted to say, "But I worked for us. But I provided. But I never left you." But in that moment, I realized you can give someone a house and still not give them warmth. You can be right and still be far away. You can fulfill duties while leaving a person alone with their feelings. I stayed quiet, and she continued. "I don't blame you. You just didn't understand what I needed." And then she said what truly changed me. "I didn't need a perfect husband. I needed you to choose me sometimes, even when there wasn't a problem. Choose me." 2 simple words, but they reveal the whole truth about marriage. Because love isn't one big vow you make when you're young. Love is thousands of small choices, every day. To look up when your person speaks, to ask, "How are you?" and actually listen, to put your hand on their shoulder for no reason, to turn off the screen and be present, to do something not because it's useful, but because it's warm. I sat there feeling something rise inside me that I avoided my whole life. Shame. Not because I was a bad man, but because I had been blind to something simple. I believed love was proven by what you endured, but sometimes love is proven by what you noticed. That night I barely slept. I lay there thinking, how many times she tried to talk and I said later. How many times she waited in the room and I turned on the TV. How many times she needed closeness and I replaced it with being productive. And the most frightening part, I thought that was maturity. I thought that was character. I thought that was what a man is supposed to do. But it wasn't. It was running from closeness. And if you're listening to me right now thinking, "This isn't me, we're fine," I want you to hear one thing. The biggest losses in a marriage don't always come from betrayal, and they don't always come from loud fights. They come from the slow disappearance of attention, from being near each other, without actually being with each other, from stopping the daily choice. After those words, something cracked inside me, not loudly, not dramatically, just the illusion that we still have time disappeared. For the first time in 41 years, I understood something simple. I loved Evelyn, but I rarely chose her. There is a difference. Love is a feeling. Choosing is an action. Love can live in your heart for decades, but if you don't confirm it with daily choice, the person beside you begins to feel empty. The next morning I did something I hadn't done in years. I sat beside her. No newspaper, no television, no rush. I asked, "What are you thinking about?" And I stayed quiet. Not to fix, not to advise, to listen. At first she looked surprised, then she smiled, the kind of smile I hadn't seen in a long time. She talked about small things, about fears, about memories, about how sometimes she felt invisible. Invisible. That word cut deep, because I never meant to make her invisible. But I did. Not with anger, not with cruelty. With inattention. And here is what I realized. People aren't afraid of aging. They're afraid of becoming unseen. I started making very small changes. Every evening I turned off the TV 30 minutes earlier. I reached for her hand. Not because it was required, but because I wanted to. I began saying thank you for things I once considered automatic. You'd be surprised how much thank you can warm a room. I began saying, "Tell me more. That matters to me. I'm here." And something shifted. She began to feel alive again, not physically, emotionally. Her voice carried warmth again. Her eyes softened. I learned another lesson. Closeness doesn't return through grand gestures. It returns through consistency, small, repeated proofs of attention. But here is the truth. I started too late. We had some time, quiet, honest, real time. And one evening she looked at me differently. No frustration, no distance, just warmth. And she said, "Now you're with me." Those words were both a gift and a sentence. A gift because I finally became the husband she needed. A sentence because I understood how many years I could have been that man, and wasn't. After she was gone, the house became painfully quiet. Not just quiet, empty. And that's when the final understanding settled in. We spend decades building stability. We think providing is enough. But years later, no one remembers the mortgage. They remember whether you looked into their eyes. They remember whether you laughed together. They remember whether they felt chosen. I didn't waste 41 years because I didn't love her. I wasted them because I loved her silently. Men of my generation often believe love is endurance. But sometimes love is softness. Sometimes love is a hand placed gently on someone's back. Sometimes love is, let's talk, even when you're tired. If you're married right now, I'm not asking you to change everything. I'm asking you to do one thing today. Choose your person, not in theory, not forever. Today. Turn off the screen. Ask what they're thinking about. Listen longer than usual, because one day you might realize there is no more later, and you'll be sitting in a quiet house replaying a sentence that came too late. I was lonely next to you. If my story prevents even one marriage from slowly cooling into silence, then maybe those 41 years were not completely wasted. Sometimes I wake up at night. The house is still standing. The furniture hasn't moved. The cups are still in the cabinet, but her footsteps are gone. And in that silence, I understand something that hurts more than grief itself. The hardest part isn't losing someone. The hardest part is realizing you could have been warmer, more attentive, more present. And you weren't. If I could say one thing to every man my age, it would be this. Don't wait for a crisis to become close. Don't wait for things to slow down. Because one day things will slow down, and the person you assumed you had time to love properly might not be there. If someone is sitting next to you tonight, put your hand on their shoulder, not out of duty, out of choice, because love is not what you feel inside. It's what the other person feels beside you, and I learned that too late.